When I was a young man, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And as many of you can imagine, it was a very life transforming thing. Suddenly, you go from sort of doing what you want, how you want, eating what you want, when you want, to a lifestyle that's a little bit more regimented, a little bit more controlled, and a little bit more thoughtful. And as I tried to come to grips with this, I went to the library and thought, there's got to be something written about this. Well, this was a long time ago, back in the early 70s. There was very little literature out there about how do you cope or adapt to diabetes. Most of what was written had been written in the 50s, and it was Freudian, the Freudian personality in diabetes. And while it was tempting to blame my mother for all my problems, I didn't think this was a good idea. So I started to educate myself and to try to learn, and part of that learning was what I read and what I could find. Part of that learning was talking to other people who, like me, had diabetes. And through a whole process of sort of doing research in the area, of reading other people's research, and talking to many people, I've derived some principles for how I think one can live with diabetes and do it effectively, but yet not become totally freaked out by it or a monk controlled by the disease. First, it is tempting to be afraid of glucose. We are all taught as people with diabetes to watch our blood sugars, to be concerned about our blood sugars, to focus on the numbers. But diabetes is not a game of numbers, it's a game of behaviors. It's not a game of perfection, it's a game of averages. So one of the ideas that I like to think about is that I want my numbers to come out good. I want the averages to be reasonable, but I want to be so obsessed by them that I'm freaked out every time I have a glucose that goes a little too high or a little too low. What I want to do is I want to think through a strategy that lets me get good numbers without falling, into the pit of hypoglycemia and having problems with that, but not also falling into the trap of ignoring that high glucose and sustained high glucose will cause me health problems, particularly down the road as I get older. So I like to practice something I call the 3-to-1 rule. Now the 3-to-1 rule is sort of the concept that for every time I allow myself to indulge in something that probably is not good diabetes food, but yet very important to me, for example, my mother's cheesecake, which, by the way, my mother makes the greatest cheesecake in the known world, I recognize as a person with diabetes and as a person who researches diabetes that this is not a good daily food for me with diabetes. In fact, it's probably not a good daily food for anybody that's concerned about their weight or their cholesterol levels, because it's a pretty rich dessert. But I'll treat that as what I call a 1. So let's say I decide I want to have a piece of cheesecake. It's really important to me, a special event, something's gone on, it's my birthday, whatever it's going to be. And I decide I want to have the cheesecake. I can compensate for that cheesecake. I can take a bolus of insulin and adapt that such that I won't have an excessively high glucose, okay? If I do that too many times, I'm going to gain a lot of weight. I'm going to pick up a lot of extra weight, and that's also sort of counterproductive to my health. So I'll treat that as a 1, and that means for that 1, the next 3 equal units, either 3 meals in a row, could be one day I'm having a big fabulous Saturday adventure, the next 3 days, it could be a weekend to the rest of the week, a 1-to-3 ratio. I know what the adjustments are. I know that they're not high glycemic powerful foods that are going to knock my glucose silly. I know how to make the adjustments, and I make that balance. Now, why do I do this? I've learned that it's easier for me to adapt to my diabetes when I allow myself a little bit of flexibility and not becoming so concerned and so focused on what I do and what I eat that it becomes almost neurotic to me. I prefer to have a little bit more flexibility, but do that with a principle and a theory that balances out the good and the bad. So for me, my numbers come out about right. I get an A1C that I like, I get a glucose average that I like, but I allow myself to have a little bit of indulgence on occasion. Now I want to underline on occasion. If you do it too much, you'll fall into a bad place. If you do it too much and you compensate with insulin, you'll gain a lot of weight. If you don't compensate with insulin and you do it a lot, you're going to have a very high glucose and you're going to have a lot of problems later on in your life, problems that you really want to avoid. The good news is the research is clear. You can avoid many of the complications of diabetes if you pay attention to your overall quality of control. So I use 3 to 1. Now, is this the right ratio for everybody else? I don't know the answer to that. You have to find out for yourself. You need to do your own experimentation. And that brings me to my second point, which I think is important. I think we all, as people with diabetes, need to experiment a little bit. You need to find out what works for you and what doesn't work for you and pay attention to it. That usually for me means that I have to test quite a bit. Now, I test my glucose probably 5 to 7 times a day. Some people think that's pretty excessive, but I find it tremendous feedback, and feedback is king in this game. I've gone on to use a continuous glucose monitor, a device that really lets me see early when I'm trending in ways that I don't want to fall into, either too high or too low, and lets me make compensations at a time that are convenient to me and allows me to balance things out. But I think we need to have a sense of controlled experimentation. By that I mean you need to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you need to talk to your healthcare provider to get some rules of guidance. When should you try a little extra insulin? When shouldn't you try a little extra insulin? How should you be prepared to deal with hypoglycemia if it comes on? I always carry a rapid-acting source of glucose with me, always. It's always with me. I have it in my briefcase, I have it in my pocket, I have it in my car, I have it in various places in my home. I'm prepared for hypoglycemia because on occasion I experiment. I try a new food, a new restaurant, something I've never eaten before. I'm trying an adjustment that I can't always carb count for. So I take the load of insulin that I think my experience says is about right, but it is an experiment, but it's a controlled experiment. I will then, for something new, test much more frequently. Half hour, 45 minutes after I eat, for example, a brand new food I've never seen before. Love to travel. I've discovered when I go to foreign countries that some of the foods are just unknown to me. I don't know what they are. I don't know how they're going to make my body react. I don't know what's going to happen with my glucose. So I test a little bit more. It's a small price to pay for the fun of the adventure of eating a foreign meal in a foreign place and not having my glucose get so high that I feel lousy and I'm really having problems later on.